Have you ever been confused while in the middle of a conversation, wondering how to respond? Are they asking me to fix something, do something, or just to listen? I think many husbands find themselves in this dilemma, not knowing how to respond. But it's just not in marriages. But confusion in conversation and communication happens in many arenas. Employees and managers, and parents and students and coaches and players. You know, anytime you're invited into a conversation, you'll be asked to respond in one of at least 5 different ways. Number one, if someone wants information, they will typically ask a question, and the listener gives the information desired or maybe refers to someone that might have the needed content, right? So an example is, where's the remote? Well, this is a question desiring information. It's on the chair. Another question might be, how would I go about cleaning my deck? I don't have the same kind as you, but I think maybe Tom does, and therefore maybe we could ask him of his suggestions, what he recommends. So someone that wants information, you give the information if you can. Number 2 is if the speaker is asking for action. The listener would either answer yes or no, and then you would either act or don't act. Will you help me clean my deck? You might respond, yes, I can do that. Or another person might ask you, will you go visit my mom? And you might reply, no, sorry, I won't be able to do that. It's clearly a desire to invite a person to take some kind of action. And number 3 gets a little more complicated. If the speaker asks for some inappropriate interaction, like gossip or triangling or enabling or control or manipulation, well, the listener would affirm the person but decline the behavior. There's wise instruction in the Bible for deciding how to respond to such requests. It says, for instance, carry each other's burdens, which is something that a person can't carry on their own, and they need help. It goes on to say each person needs to carry their own load, which is their own personal responsibility that they must carry on their own. So someone asks, will you go visit my mom? And they go on to say, I don't have time, and besides, you're much better at this than I am, and you're really good at taking care of people. I get too nervous and anxious. So here's a case where your friend is trying to manipulate you into taking their load, their responsibility. And so you might respond by saying, it sounds like you'd like someone to visit your mom because you're feeling a bit anxious about visiting yourself. Well, I want you to know I appreciate you asking me, and I really do value our friendship. I know you're hoping that your mom is cared for and you're hoping someone would visit, but I can't. However, I am confident that you'll be able to overcome your nervousness, and maybe if you'd like, maybe we could arrange that you and I would maybe go together for the first time since you're pretty nervous about it. Or maybe you could find someone else to go with you if our schedules don't match up. But I believe that you're going to find a way. Notice that this response attempts to affirm the person and yet decline the behavior of manipulation, and then present optional ideas with a follow-up affirmation. Here's another example. A person comes to you and says, did you hear what Dad said about your brother? This sounds like an invitation to participate in a discussion about someone who's not present, right? So you might respond by saying, thanks for being concerned about Dad, but I'm just not comfortable talking about him without him being here. Affirm the person and then decline the behavior. Number 4, another response is if the speaker is seeking understanding or wanting involvement and desires friendship or wants to vent emotion or maybe is sharing a story or wants to build rapport or is just exploring their own ideas and thoughts and emotions, then the listener would reflect back to accommodate understanding. An example might be, I don't like visiting my mother in the hospital. I can't stand the smell and to see so many people sick. It just makes me feel sad and anxious. You might respond, oh, so it sounds like you're a little anxious about the thoughts of visiting your mom in the hospital. And so you reflect back for understanding. You reflect back so that they get the sense that you're with them. And they say, yeah, I don't know what it is about hospitals. I'm just not comfortable. And you might respond, so it sounds like you're uncertain about the reason why hospitals make you so uncomfortable. See, what you're doing is you're asking a deeper question that searches for clarity. You see, in this scenario, the one who initiated the conversation was asking someone to take over their load, their responsibility. But as the listener reflected back, it gave the speaker a chance to think deeper, which really ended in the person challenged to explore their own thoughts and their own emotions. Another example like this would be, I'm not very confident at home projects like cleaning my deck. I've never done it before, and I don't want to ruin it by putting on the wrong cleaning agent. You might respond, oh, so when you think about cleaning your deck for the first time, you get kind of nervous about it. And maybe you're not sure what product to use. Is that right? You see, in this case, the homeowner started out not very confident, but ended up concluding that maybe they just needed more information to help them overcome their anxiety. See, the seeker is ultimately trying to know themselves better. Gosh, why am I so nervous about cleaning my deck? Maybe it's because I don't have enough information. See, in this particular scenario, these conversations are attempts at gaining more self-awareness. And finally, the 5th response that you'll be asked to give is if a person wants to accuse or to be critical or to share complaints and be negative. So the listener, I would encourage you to affirm the person because love covers a multitude of sins. And then reflect with empathy. See, understanding a person is not agreeing with that person. Expressing understanding will not encourage the person to continue their complaining. You give the listener, or the listener gives the speaker's emotion back to them in a very loving and gentle way. And then encourage the person to seek understanding and more self-awareness. They may say, I'm really upset with you for refusing to visit my mom in the hospital. You're so selfish and inconsiderate. So here's a very critical statement that's fueled with anger and resentment, right? So you affirm the person. I really want you to know how much I care for you and your mom and how much I appreciate our friendship. I know how much you love your mom and want the best for her. And then you add empathy and return their emotion back to them. You seem pretty frustrated with me right now when I told you I couldn't go. Is that right? You see, what I did is I gave their frustration back to them. It's not my frustration, it's theirs to deal with. And they say, yeah, that's right, I am. And so they accepted their frustration, which is a good thing. And then you want to encourage self-awareness, like, I'd like for us to be able to talk honestly with each other and to still maintain peace within our relationship. And I know you do too. You see, this opens the door for more conversation, for resolution, and maybe we could begin to talk about healthy boundaries and maybe why they're so important to us and why we're so hesitant to maybe to carry each other's load versus carrying our own load. You see, this person might be frustrated with himself for not visiting his own mother. Fear could have led him to a lot of shameful thoughts. Why is it that someone would get angry when someone else attempts to maintain a healthy boundary? See, these are all good questions that might open the door for more self-awareness and understanding. See, people who are critical are often critical of themselves and yet are blind to their own faults at the same time. People want to see themselves better than they think they are. So one way to feel better about ourselves is to be critical of others, to blame others, to get angry at others. See, if a person can see someone worse off than they see themselves, maybe they can overcome their own shame and their own guilt. This is a subconscious effort to allow the trouble inside to become the trouble outside of them. What we don't like about ourselves, we see clearly in other people. So we will often criticize the world outside before we pay attention to the same thing that we have going on inside of us. Here's an example of that is a person might say, I don't like it when you try to control me. See, my focus is on your control. My focus is on the things that I notice outside of myself, your control. At the same time, my inside shame is telling me, don't be controlled. They'll take life away from you. You better be the one in charge. And so you try to control others before they control you. And now you're guilty of the very thing which you think others are at fault. Have you ever had a parent demand, don't be disrespectful to your mom? While they're yelling and being aggressive and being forceful and being mean and being disrespectful and telling you not to be disrespectful, they are guilty of what they're accusing you of. See, self-awareness is an often underused process in our own growth. Well, download the summary of the 5 types of requests and review each example.